All right, well, here we are again, going through the Bible with Calvary St. Joe. I'm Chuck Rhein, and I'm glad that you're taking time to look into this. Today's teachings out of the book of Jeremiah, an amazing man, an amazing Old Testament prophet, and I love chapter 20, and I have, from the moment I heard teaching out of chapter 20, beginning in verse 8, Jeremiah is going through a lot to be a prophet in the Old Testament, and at this point he's been beaten, and in verse 8 he is very vivid in his description of what he's going through. He says, "For whenever I speak, I cry out and I shout violence and destruction, for the word of the Lord has become for me a reproach and derision all day long." It's kind of interesting to read the New Living Translation on that verse. It says, "So these messages from the Lord have made me a household joke." But verse 9 says, "If I say I will not mention him or speak any more in his name, there is in my heart, as it were, a burning fire shut up in my bones, and I am weary with holding it in, and I cannot." It's interesting that the prophet means that after declaring what God has revealed to him, he is being viewed as a traitor to his country and a false prophet. And of course, if you've gotten familiar with the Old Testament, you know that there's a test for anybody that gives a prophecy. And if it's a false prophecy, then that prophet's to be stoned. And so he'd been beaten. He had to endure painful public disgrace. And this, we don't always think about this, but this had the effect of discouraging the people that still believed in him, people who trusted in his help from God, or even Egypt against Babylon. G. Campbell Morgan wrote that it's in all likelihood that Jeremiah received an official scourging of 40 stripes, save one. And so that was designed to make somebody confess their crime. And Jeremiah is guilty of declaring God's word. And so what we read as the changing component within Jeremiah comes from within his heart. And we know that as a person, the prophet had the same control over his mind as you and I have today. And so the same urge to utter truth, as well as the power to refuse, God gives each one of us that ability to say yes or no. And it demonstrates how the Spirit within Jeremiah contained a fire that purified him. It was a fire that strengthened him, and it elevated him above whatever limit he had set for himself. And how many people do you know that get burned out, and we get blessed by their ministry, we get impacted by their studies, but maybe there are a lot of reasons why that happens. And where will you and I be, more importantly, for the calling that God has for us? Where a holy God causes us to surrender to that which is described in the Bible in Deuteronomy 4:24, the consuming fire. It reads, "For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God." And so just a final thought, because I don't like to just envision people in the Bible as like they're somehow superhero Christians, that they didn't struggle, And I know that Jeremiah had to feed his heart with something that was good spiritual food. And so in chapter 38, he was pretty much arrested and left to die in a cistern, which doesn't sound comfortable in any capacity. And a eunuch, Ebed-Melech, in the king's house at that time, told the king that men committed evil against Jeremiah. And so the king gives an edict for he and 30 other men to go rescue Jeremiah from dying in a cistern. Now the thing is that while Jeremiah is in the cistern, he doesn't know how the story unfolds. He doesn't know that he's going to be rescued. I'm sure he knows the character and nature of God, but I personally believe that after Jesus Christ, Jeremiah is one of the greatest men in all the Bible. he was commanded from God to not have a wife, and may not have had a single convert in his ministry. But what he did have, the fire of God, it burned in his bones, and he couldn't hold back God's word. He couldn't hold back that which the Lord gave him. And, it's funny, in our culture, when somebody's really enthusiastic about Jesus Christ, and they drink in God's word, you find them worshiping, they're encouraging, they admonish other people. They're not perfect, because none of us are. But what do we say about that person? We say they're on fire for the Lord. And what was Jeremiah known for being? He's known for being a weeping prophet. And I just have to wonder at times, maybe what God esteems versus what man esteems is vastly different. And I'm just grateful for Jeremiah. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you